A Fox News alert now on a bizarre and incredible update to the O.J. Simpson saga. Los Angeles police confirm they are now looking at the history of a knife reportedly found buried on Simpson's old estate in Brentwood, California. It's been more than 20 years since the so-called trial of the century, when the former football and movie star was acquitted in the brutal murders of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ronald Goldman. The new owners of Simpson's estate demolished the home in 1998. The knife in question reportedly was turned over to an officer around that time by a construction worker on the site. Well, that now retired cop reportedly kept the knife at his home until turning it over to the police department in January. So where do we go from here? Ashley Merchant is a criminal defense attorney. Yodit Tewolde is a former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney. Dr. Michael Bodden is also with us, forensic pathologist and a Fox News contributor. Welcome to each and all of you. First of all, Yodit, this is not going to in some way reopen the case. O.J. Simpson was charged. It was the trial of the century, but he was acquitted. There is no way, no matter, if this knife is the real deal, there's no way you're going to reopen that case, are you?
You know what?
No,
Double Jeopardy says that no, you're not. Like you said, O.J. Simpson was already charged, tried, and acquitted of both of the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. So, no, in terms of criminally charging O.J. Simpson for something he's already been tried for, absolutely not.
Well, and it may be, Ashley, that the former police officer who had this knife, again, the details are a little murky here, but they were knocking down O.J.'s old mansion. Reportedly, a construction worker finds this knife buried in the soil. There's a cop across the street, working security on a movie set, or he may have been an ex-cop at that point. It's not entirely clear, and even the department doesn't know. But the guy walks up to him, gives him the knife, says, "Here, I found this," and presumed that it was going to be entered into evidence or used in the investigation. The cop may have thought that the case is over, it's not any good to anybody, I'm going to keep this thing.
Right, but he could be facing obstruction charges if he somehow was shown to have obstructed this investigation, what time he found it, what he did with it, who he alerted to the discovery of this knife. He could be found to have been violating the obstruction law. The problem is it's been quite some time, and so the statute of limitations has most likely run. So he's probably not going to face any repercussions for keeping this knife out of the public eye.
The murders took place in 1994, Dr. Bodden. If this thing was buried in the ground, it was buried for 4 years. If there's blood on it, can they still determine to whom that blood belonged?
Yes, absolutely. Depending on how it was kept afterwards. Blood and fingerprints, DNA, will stay for hundreds of years through other examples. If the knife was taken out of the ground, everything might still be on it. If it were washed off, often they'll wash away the fingerprints and much of the blood, but portions of the blood and DNA, sufficient to give DNA analysis, are often buried inside of crevices or the place that the blade hooks up with the handle of the knife, so they may still be available. However, John, at the time of the autopsy, the stab wounds were measured carefully. The width, the length, the depth, the thickness were all measured. And I was involved way back and then, more than a dozen knives that were found in the area at the time they were looking for knives in bushes in people's houses. None of them matched up with O.J., and I think one has to be careful that this can just be another red herring. And one other thing, John, that I mentioned, it's interesting that in famous deaths, whether it's a serial murderer or Einstein's brain or x-rays of Martin Luther King when he was at Harlem Hospital stabbed during his lifetime, that doctors, police officers, judges, take trophies, not just serial murderers who take trophies, and that is totally unprofessional, but it happens.
Yodit, I mean, I remember I was covering that case back when it was, well, more than a movie series on FX. They never found the knife. Why did, I mean, you're a former prosecutor, wouldn't the police department have swept his entire estate with a metal detector or something like that?
Well, you know, the lead detective in that case already confirmed that they did everything they could to look for that weapon. Now, you have to understand, of course, now this popular docuseries on FX that's unraveling all the details of this, you know, crazy high-profile case is going on at the moment, the People versus O.J. Simpson. And in that trial, that was the big deal. The prosecution could not find the murder weapon. And with these crime series, people who are emotionally invested in these type of cases want to relive, want to relitigate these cases, and want to be an investigator. And I'm going to think at this point with this knife finding is something that is just a hoax, in my opinion. I mean, why now? Why this knife?
Yeah.
I mean, the lead investigator had already confirmed that there have been tips in the past. But why are they holding a press conference for this one? Well, because there's a series going on that's really popular, and they need ratings. So I'm just not buying into it. This is, again, the consequences of having to have a crime series where people want to rehash issues and unsolved questions.
We should point out, Ashley, it could be absolutely nothing.
Right. It could definitely be nothing. And I agree. Why would you wait this long to bring this forward? And quite frankly, at this point, it doesn't, other than the public knowing what happened, which we all want to know what happened, but I think we all know what happened. Other than that, legally, it's insignificant because he cannot be retried for this case. And so it wouldn't be admissible in a court of law. It's not going to have any bearing on the outcome of the case because it's over. So at this point, it's just really the public's interest in knowing every piece of the puzzle.
Ashley Merchant, Yodit Tewolde, Dr. Michael Bodden. Thank you all.
Thank you, John.